Sheesh. There it is. So much sponges holding it together.
No, it has a bunch of, you know what I mean, like natural caves and stuff.
It has a lot of nooks and nannies.
Nooks and nannies.
What up, everybody? It's Ted from New Wave. It's New Wave at Aquaria After Dark. This week we are discussing, well, we're going to kind of go rock it out. So we're going to start with aquascaping, kind of one-on-one aquascaping, why we choose the rocks we choose, why we go with the style, the technique, all of the above. As you guys can see, pretty much why we're starting it is we're in our new studio here. We just aquascaped our newish, can we call it new?
Yeah.
Kind of repurposed.
Yep.
Transferred. Yep. Transplant tank. This is the Red Sea 750 XXL. And with a whole bunch of actual rock, Jen is hoarding from her garage / basement / everything zone there. The things where places go to die, or what is the statement?
It's a no-go zone.
Yeah, no-go zone.
The no-go zone. It's also where the raccoons live.
Yep.
Yeah.
But they didn't touch my rock.
That's the very important thing.
Where things go to die.
Yep.
It's the aquarium museum / rock house.
Hey, now we're looking at side businesses here. I like it.
So yeah, to start off, we stacked this tank. I have been hoarding this. I have 50 boxes of rock that I bought when Indo closed first time. I can't remember how many years now it's been, but I've been saving it for something special. Obviously, we're gonna use the rest of it or a lot of it for the big tank at home when we do that one too. So we'll show that. But it was so much fun to work with yesterday because it's the best. I mean, it has so much character. It's so easy to stack. And as Caesar said, it actually takes no skill whatsoever to stack rock if you have good rock.
Yep, absolutely.
How long ago did I say that?
I don't know. It was one of our first jobs together, and I was so proud of my rock stacking job. And I turned around and I asked Caesar, what are your thoughts on this? And he's like, yeah, I mean, it's okay. I mean, anyone can stack rock if it's good rock. It's like, really gonna just throw me a bone here?
Ouch.
So every time I stack a rock, every time I rock stack, I always say, you know what? It's just the rock. It has nothing to do with me.
I'm just here.
It sounds like me.
It does.
That's a bad thing.
Yeah.
Sarcastic a-hole.
Poor stuff. What do you think of this dress?
Yeah, it looks all right.
It's a dress.
Anyone can wear a dress.
Yeah.
So this is the first time this rock's been in a tank, correct?
Yeah. So it was interesting to open those boxes after that many years. So obviously it was live a long time ago, 3, 4, 5 years ago. But everything had completely died off. But opening those boxes for the first time since they were taped shut, a lot of interesting things came off, which is important. Before I even put it in the tank, we had to scrub off all the rocks. We are going to be doing a video. You can see the time lapse of how I took all the rocks out, scrubbed them, laid them out, how we chose the design, what we want to see as our end game, because there's so many different types of ways to aquascape, especially now with negative space and all the other things. So
Cool. Do you find any dead critters in there?
Oh yeah, a million, a ton of mussels. I mean, they had nothing in them left. A lot of feather dusters, and I think that's and a lot of sponges. I think the main thing that I came out with is really, really hands that are on fire. Should have wore some gloves because those a lot of stuff was that was still on there. Definitely very sharp or prickly, still toxic.
It looks good though.
It looks great. Yet again, I can't get over the negative space along with the depth that's created with it. Account, yes, to the rock is definitely a big thing, but also I think the artist is also a huge play in what you're looking for your aquascape, i.e. do you have a lot of fish? Are you looking to go for more SPS? Are you looking for more LPS? Kind of that all depends on how you aquascape and the style that you put into it too. This one I think is a really good cross because you can see some nice little points that SPS will be really great. Some nice little ledges where you can get some euphyllia growing. And of course, there's always place for schoolies.
Yeah, I know that's it. In the video I did, we have a whole sand bed. But what I also like to do when I do any rock stacking, especially this time, I mean, I didn't do it dry. So there was water in it, which isn't always the easiest, especially because I couldn't use any glue in under the water. Or I could, but I just didn't. But I also made sure that the rocks for my base structure were all the way down to the glass, so that if we do decide to do some critters, jawfish or other gobies, blennies, all that kind of fun stuff, that they don't topple over. And over time, I will take smaller pieces and glue just some joints together so that it does stay in place. But I did leave a bunch of space on the sand bed where you can barely see the rock peeking out. It gives it that almost a dimension that the rock is coming out of the sand or out of the glass. And that's where I'm going to put all the fun LPS. Because I don't like them on directly on the sand bed because I think that they just get covered. That's when the tissue damage, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I also want to give a little heads up and tip too. I think Jen taught me this many years ago. When you're actually doing your aquascaping and you need to glue something, instead of just leaving that raw glue joint there, take some of your kind of crumbled up stuff that you've made when you smash some rocks together and put that into that joint, because then it'll continue that natural look through it, not just having literal a glue band around your rock. Because that is kind of, I don't like to point out other people's tanks and flaws and stuff, but that is one thing. I'll look at somebody's tank and I'll see those and I'm like, ooh, look at that. That's ugly.
I mean, over time they do cover, but it takes a while.
It takes a long time.
And if you're aquascaping after the fact or you're adding things to it, I always save like my extra hermit crab shells or other little pieces and rubble, and then you can just take those and glue those in between. So that's what I'll do here. So I mean, I don't have the option unless I want to drain the tank, because I do really, really like using the thick super glue with the Instaset. I think it works the best. I've tried using that mortar, the mud, all that other stuff. It just makes a huge mess, in my opinion. It's just the easiest to work with. But again, I did it kind of backwards, or we filled the tank first and then the rock. But I knew that it had such good character that it wasn't like boulders. And that's why I think too, knowing what rock you're using, that will kind of tell how you're going to have to put it together. Because if you're using like the man-made, the Marco rock, the I don't even know what they call it anymore. There's a whole bunch of different kinds. Those types of rocks, I mean, they're very boulder-like. They're very heavy, so they don't stack very easy.
Well, they're using also those flat,
Oh, yeah.
whatever they're called. But the problem with those is they don't look natural. Obviously, if you're going to have it covered with coral, you don't have to worry about it. But if it's going to be bare or mostly bare, it's not going to.
Yeah, so those flat, like the stacks, I think they're called stacks. Right?
Yep.
I don't know. In my opinion, it looks very cichlid-like. And so I don't go to, or when I am diving, I don't see a lot of reefs that emulate that. So I think for me, I was more, for this tank, I think all of us were going more for, we have the most space to put corals. I mean, I can, there's very few points that are actually touching any glass, so that I can put corals all the way around. And I'd rather use corals to build up the height and then rock.
One thing I really like too is you have a lot of open swimming space and then a lot of hiding spots within the rock work too for all of those fish that like to kind of find their little caves and spots. So you can see a bunch of little like arches that you worked in and different swimming areas like that.
The only thing that sucks is if you ever have to catch a fish out.
Yeah.
Never, ever going to happen. So I'm obviously
That's gonna
QT
be
is
a
a
tough
big
one.
deal, and choosing wisely for things that get along. The one thing too with using this rock I found that was really easy was you want to make it look like it's one continuous piece. So like I was telling, we were talking about earlier on this far right side, it looks pretty simple, but it's actually probably like 25 different pieces. There's only 4 larger pieces. I ran out of larger pieces of rock. And so then I just kind of shoved in smaller pieces so you can't really tell where the beginning and the ending is. It just gives it a more natural look.
Wow.
Absolutely, because that is something like I've never personally been scuba diving. I've seen a lot of videos, but that's more what you would anticipate seeing out on a reef, not just a perfect wall or like you said, where the stack's coming up, where you see a lot of different interpretations of an aquascaping. And for me, I like to emulate that more natural-esque where you would actually see those open space along with the caves and the nooks and the nannies and all that fun stuff.
And I think there's a time and place too for the stacks. I mean, I've seen a lot of beautiful acro tanks when you really want to emphasize a lot of the plating and tabling acros. That looks amazing. But you have to have a plan, and it generally is a 2 to 3, 4 2 to 3, 4 year plan where it might look pretty
Weird.
ridiculous in the beginning, but I mean, obviously as it grows out, that's where you get those for flow. So I mean, flow is important when stacking rock too, picking the right rock. And then I mean, we all sat down and what are we going to put it in? Are we going to cycle the rock? Are we going to cure it? Are we going to cure it in the tank? Are we going to cure it at a different place? So we made the decision to cure it in the tank. I think we can talk a little bit about what does it even mean to cure rock? I mean, it's not like it's sick and we're curing.
So what's a good alternative now for rock, since we can't get that stuff anymore?
As an like they make man-made stuff, I guess.
And you can get live rock now there are a couple places that you can still get
Florida
live rock.
Does live rock.
Well, I think that you can get the stuff
Fiji?
they have in I don't know what the website is, but they actually throw it in the Gulf.
Oh, yep.
And then they scoop it out a couple of years later or whatever. But I don't know how good that's gonna be, if it's gonna look that good.
I think they're doing that more for just adding biodiversity into your tank. I don't think that's really gonna change the scape of the rock in any way, shape, or form. Would you guys agree there?
It just depends because they can't farm it the way. I mean, this is beautiful rock, yes, but if you figure out and actually logistically think about how they collected this rock, I'm glad that it's no longer available.
Yeah. Big time.
I mean, they're just blowing apart reefs. I mean, when I was taking each piece out, I mean, you can see, coral skeletons around each different piece. So, I mean, that is, I think when they do put the rock in the ocean, they are doing for biodiversity. That's one thing we will be missing in this, because again, it was all dead anyway. So, I mean, we're going to have to go through a cycle. We're going to have to do all that fun stuff and then add that all back in. But again, having a plan, because live rock, the way it used to be, doesn't. I mean, you can still get some of it, but that has opens another thing. I mean, the reason why this I feel is a good option, well, for us obviously because we had it, but pest free. I mean, if anything's gonna live in that over 4 years, then I guess it deserves to stay in there
Cap off to you
forever. Yeah. So that's one nice thing. I know that. I mean, the biodiversity we're missing, we can add that over time. But hopefully we're skipping the pest step as well.
Because that to me is why I think a lot of people turned away from doing live rock, and going into that more man-made, create your own style thing, deal with your own pests at your own will, more or less. Because I remember I've seen a lot of bins where you kind of look at it and you go, ooh, what is happening in there?
Yeah. Aptasia Farm.
Yep.
See, I wanted to do an experiment like that. For example, set up a tank and then have another little tank hooked up to that same system and put the actual live rock in there from the ocean, in order to get the bio in it without maybe avoiding having any pests that come into the other main display. But
I think for pests like animal pests that might work, but I think for algae algae pests or smaller other things, you're gonna. But again, it's pick your poison, because I mean, the biodiversity that you do get, the sponge growth. I mean, when we pulled this out of the house, I mean, remember that beautiful purple sponge that got ruined, which I'm not going to talk about because I'm still upset about it.
But I mean, it would be avoiding only like mantis shrimps and big things like that. But obviously, the small stuff like flatworms or whatever the hell is in it, it's not going to
feather
work.
dusters, things like that, they'll pass right through.
Yeah.
In my opinion, I think it's worth it. Like I think I can deal with the pest as long as I get the benefit of the live rock.
So that, I guess that brings in a question. Is there a good alternative for bacteria and biodiversity to add to your tank than if live rock, because live rock isn't available obviously for everybody. It's limited quantities and it's very expensive. So what are some of the other bacteria bases or other additives that, I mean, what is our plan for this one?
Good question. For me personally, I really love Microbacter 7 for pretty much any application for starting a tank. If you're doing a weird algae bloom, any and all applications, Microbacter 7 to me is a great additive to it. For me at home, what I had really great success with was battling cyano and algae blooms was Polyp Labs Genesis
Okay.
bacteria as well. I tried the Microbacter out there, just didn't work out. Tried the Genesis, had great success with it. And those are my two ones that I have personal experience with that I love to use and recommend to most people.
Yeah. Microbacter 7, by far the most popular and highly recommended. Like, that's something you should always keep in your arsenal. I've tried Zyme 9 too from Fritz to actually cycle a new tank, which it can be used for maintenance or cycling, and that worked well. Turbo Start from them is super popular for the cycling. In my opinion, and you guys tell me if you agree, like, I think the more kind of different types of bacteria products you have in there, the more diversity you're going to have. So, I mean, ideally, a little bit of everything, but obviously you don't want to go buy every single bacteria product and start.
And some of
dosing
them
that into the
compete
system.
with each
I
other.
was
Right.
just going to say, you'd have to look at which bacteria strain you're actually getting in there. 'Cause
I was gonna say I'm gonna poke the bear on that one, because how do you know what's in each one of them? For all you know, it could be.
That's
Well, of course, it's whatever it says on the bottle.
yeah.
That's the problem.
Or
The
what you
bottle
read
doesn't
on the-
say anything.
It
Yeah,
says good
sometimes-
It
stuff.
says denitrifying bacteria.
It
Right?
works.
Yeah. Of course.
It's just like your water parameters. They're ideal.
It works. That's
Yes.
it. It's working.
No, it is true. So I think that's why like podcasts and other things like this are important, because it's like, what have you tried? What have you not liked? What have you liked? Why have you liked it? So I know like Dr. Tim's is really popular too for cycling tanks. So there's so many different things.
I think each one kind of has its own useful application too, because
Agreed.
if you have like a quarantine system and you need almost an immediate cycle happening, you're not going to choose something that has a lower bacteria rate than like a Dr. Tim's that's kind of meant for that almost immediate ammonia source to be in there, where Microbacter 7, it's kind of a building it up type of
Yep.
a deal.
See, I think you can introduce bacteria in many different ways, even when you put a new coral in. And that's why sometimes I debate the fact that I dip my corals before I put them in the system. It's almost like I'd rather have a QT for a coral, because I feel like if I dip it, I might be killing some of that beneficial bacteria on it, and then it doesn't get introduced into my system. But you would have to have a QT system and watch it for a few months
beforehand. Yep.
And not everybody can do that.
Or will.
Or
Or
has
will do
the
it,
space
yes.
or the logistics to do it.
Yeah, lighting and all the
Yep.
filtration, stuff like that. Yeah. I mean,
But yeah, ideally, absolutely. Because going back to the biodiversity, that's name of the game pretty much when you're doing
and
it.
I think if you're doing in each application, I mean, you can have a successful reef tank no matter what application. It just depends on your time frame, and what your end goal. I think that if you're doing a bare bottom, the way that you would do what you'd use for bacteria or what you would do for your timeline would be much different than if you had a sand bed.
Yes.
Yeah. And how much other biodiversity or
Mm-hmm.
bio you have in there, like rocks and bricks and all sorts of other goodies.
And I don't know if it makes a difference or not, because in my experience, bare bottom tanks always have been difficult to establish.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know if it's obviously the sand has to do with it, but even if you introduce certain amount of bricks in your sump or whatever, I don't know. There's something to the sand thing. Obviously, over time it's gonna work because but it takes longer.
Well,
So-
yeah, I mean, and
Stability.
yeah, it is. And Ryan debunked that when they've done tons of research on that too, where he threw everything in the kitchen sink at it, and still, I mean, have I seen beautiful bare bottom tanks? Absolutely. But you set them up very differently than you would do a sanded tank.
And I think your realistic goals on the bare bottom in comparison to a sanded tank, where bare bottom, you're looking at years before it looks like a beautiful reef. Sanded tanks, you can get away with doing it in a few months. You can get it looking pretty.
Yeah.
Is it recommended? No, but you could do it.
That's true.
Where I think those bare bottom ones, they're a pickle to get going and setting up and rocking and rolling, just because I think it loses a lot of the biodiversity in the sand, and then just how much more extra flow is kicking through there.
Yeah, I think bare bottom has a place too. I mean, a lot of for bare bottom tanks is SPS dominant. Would you guys agree?
Yeah.
Versus, because you need that high intense flow.
Mhm.
Although I would argue In the ocean, there are no bare bottom sections of the ocean. However, I mean, there's a whole bunch to the ocean that we don't have in our tanks either.
That's what I don't like about people. It's like, well, you don't see you see all the structure in the rock. You don't see sand there. I'm like, okay, but the oceans are connected and there's sand over there. So
yeah, I mean, there's not like one big protein skimmer either. You can argue that. It's like,
not,
but
yeah.
you go sit on the shore in the morning and
You can smell it.
Oh yeah.
But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh,
Like
absolutely.
they think they're swimming in a freaking pool just in that section. No, they're all connected.
Well, and there is a bottom somewhere. It doesn't matter if they can't see it. There's still a bottom.
Well, but you know what I mean? Those ridiculous assumptions, whatever. I'm just saying. It's
Get
just-
Caesar going.
Yeah, I know.
Get Caesar
I think
going.
he started the sentence with, "I don't really like people,"
I did. I'm glad you caught that too.
I think people that
but then I don't really like people that da 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 da. Just basically stop it. I don't like people.
Yeah. We all love you, Caesar.
So so this is one way of aquascaping. I clearly I didn't secure any of it, so I will have to go back in. You can secure it. There's tons of different options there. Should we kind of dive into that, or do you want to go into what other types of rocks that you can get this look without? I mean, obviously this isn't available, so getting this look without having this available.
that's actually what I was asking before too, like the alternatives to
The alternatives?
like I mean, Marco Rock is
One of them.
one of them.
Real Reef Rock is another company that
Right.
makes them.
Carib Sea does a ton.
Yep.
The branches too. Yep.
And I think really when you're choosing, like, let's say a man-made rock in comparison, the diverse structures that they make with it. I know Carib Sea makes Monty plates, Tonga branches, imitation Pukani rocks. I mean, they're all available, and that's what really is going to give your tank that really natural look, is because in grand scheme of it, the live rock is just dead coral. So why not try to duplicate that and go with it from there?
And I think what people do forget, especially when you're starting with a bare tank with no corals, is your rock structure, generally speaking, for a reef tank is just that. It's a structure for your corals. So building it for the corals, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's appealing. I've done structures where they're very pillar-like, and people come in, and I have a vision where I'm going to be putting, euphilia or things that are, add a lot of wave or, a lot of flow. And they look at it like, why would you build it? It's like a straight up stump. And it's like, well, if you took all the corals off of what our front display tank looks like, I don't think no one would really stack the rock like that.
No. Everybody,
Unless you're doing a fish only.
Yeah.
they look at you like, what is going on with this big wall? Are you guys building the Great Wall of China underneath there?
Yeah, I think it'll look cool.
Yeah.
Covered in euphilia.
Oh, absolutely. But then once you get what Jen was saying, you have all the sticks on the top. That's going to add that kind of what you envision a natural reef would look like, where you see all the pictures where it's just stick heaven.
Right.
Yeah. And the one thing too that I've learned a lot from just aquascaping and tank maintenance, I guess, for that purpose, is a lot of people want these caves and these arches. I want them for my fish, and then they put it right on the top. And I used to do it too. The problem is when you put the arch right on the top, everything underneath is shadowed. There's no light. So you can only put corals on the top, generally speaking. And then underneath is all wasted space. So utilizing as much space, because, I mean, we're all here to help you be like great reefers. You're going to run out of space. So maximizing all of that. So there's some technique to I call it the snowball effect or snowman effect, where you get the boulders and people are like, okay, I'll just make a stack, like a base of a snowman, a middle snowman, and a head of a snowman. That's not cool, no matter what. There's so many videos right now that you can see on how to, like, you can chisel it, you can make, you can glue it, you can do all these other fun things to make different shapes. But then thinking about it, looking at it from the top down, and seeing where your light's going to be hitting, because that's also part of Aquascape too, is knowing that, I want my acans. It's just like gardening, where you have your, your foreground, midground, background. I want my acans, my zoes and stuff to be in the front. But if I have a big arch over the top of it, it's just going to be a shadowed, dark mass.
Yeah. And so when people are researching aquascaping, they'll probably run into, and I know I did when I first started looking at it, the rule of 2/3. And how much would you say that plays an impact on how you aquascape, or you recommend someone aquascaping a tank?
Can you want to explain what you mean by the 2/3?
So like the rule of 2/3, like, trying to explain it. Basically, you kind of have like a half moon pattern to the tank if you're looking top down. And then you also have, a high section, a mid section, and a low section with, I guess, a reef tank, separate bommies, kind of sort of staggered.
I don't think that
the best way to look at it would be kind of look up the rule of 2/3 in nature and look at a diagram. They'll actually have kind of like a spiral pattern to it. But do you guys take into account? Maybe I'm just throwing this out there. Do you guys
I'm looking
take
at
into
it up
account
right
at
now
all,
just in
or?
case. So
I don't know if it applies
I'm gonna
anymore.
I'm gonna be honest. I've never heard of that rule before.
Okay.
I've heard the
I
rule
know
of
it's been in
thirds.
planted tanks. I didn't know how much
No, you're
people
right.
take into account.
You're right, and it's an art. They have books and books and books on it. That is the rule of thirds. Maybe it's called in aquascaping.
Huh.
I'm looking it up. You guys talk about something else.
I
while look
remember
this up.
seeing that on an actual saltwater book thing.
A book thing.
thing.
One of those things with papers and
remember.
words and they string together and they
I
make
only look at the
sense.
pictures.
Was it a coloring book season?
You know,
I threw everyone for a loop with that question, I guess.
You did. You stumped us all. On
Yeah,
that. We
it's
don't
called the
even know.
rule of thirds.
Rule of thirds, yep.
Yeah. And then, and so it's how to make the depth. So
Yep.
I would agree. I think that, okay, so striking contrast with color and size. So basically it's I probably should have done a little more research on that before you asked the question.
I think
stumped us.
it happens naturally.
It
though,
is.
The longer you do it,
To be honest with you, I
with
actually
experience, it just happens.
I
so.
agree with you. So when I started, and when we get the video done on this one, when I do start on one side, and then I did have three base rocks, and then from there I build up and back. So I'm utilizing without actually knowing the theory. Now I'm gonna have to to read into the theory much more.
That's why I asked, because I didn't know if it's something you consciously like think about when you're placing stuff, or if it just kind of you envision it
Subconsciously
and
do it.
you just do it.
I think someone that it's just starting to do it probably has to look it up.
Figure it
But
out.
Jen has been doing it for so long that she does it. She doesn't even know.
You
she's
know
doing it.
what natural kind of
Yeah,
looks like, and you
exactly.
just piece it together.
Yeah, I think we should post something on this though, because it's very interesting, and I did know about it. I guess I didn't consciously really think about it, but it's exactly what you do to create the depth. Because I think that goes right back into talking about what we were just talking about without even knowing it. The snowman. There's no thirds there. The third isn't the middle stomach of the snowman.
So what about now? Let's talk about the negative space aquascaping. I haven't seen a whole lot of it because I haven't really dove into it, but I hear about it a lot on podcasts that I listen to.
So I'm kind of naive when it comes to that. What do you define as a negative space aquascape?
Meaning, I think not a lot of rock work.
Well, it's that, and then you can create the negative space. So you make when I envision a negative space tank, I envision like where it has those ledges that aren't like you can use. You almost use like geometry, I guess, to juxtapose rocks, so that you could have like these ledges where your fish can hide underneath, and then you're using your space and with minimal. It's like a minimalistic look.
Is that now? I know a lot of people still believe in, or do you guys think that the amount of rock you put in your tank is gonna have an effect on? Obviously, it does probably on your biological filtration, but can you mitigate that with just bricks in your sump, like Marine Pure or something like that?
The one thing I would assume is that you're going to have less small creatures in your display tank for the fish and your other invertebrates in the tank to eat, regardless of if you have more biological filtration in the sump. If we're talking just biological, my guess would be yes, you can
'cause you have
substitute it.
Yeah.
But you have the surface area. It's surface area that
Yep.
you're really looking for. So with negative space, you're just creating that somewhere else.
It was
You
the
need to
chair.
go do
It was
something,
the chair.
Oh my God, we got caffeine. We got, oh dear.
There's also only so much room you have in your sump, though. So to a certain extent,
Yeah.
you can only fit so much in there.
And I want to talk about that too, because putting rock in your sump, I don't think is
Nope.
is a great idea at all, because it actually goes back and it does exactly what you don't want it to do. It creates big nitrogen pockets. It creates little areas for detritus to settle and make a huge mess.
Well, I hate that.
Out of sight, out of mind too, where you just don't clean it like you think you're
Yeah.
gonna be like, oh, I'm gonna clean
Ever
this every
really want to
week.
make Caesar take a bunch of extra random rocks and throw it in his sump? Like in any of the farm tanks or any tanks that he's taking care of, just like, oh, I'll take this or a coral skeleton and I'll just throw it in the sump. I'll remember it later. Oh God, I can hear him like my mom, like angry cleaning. I'm probably swearing in Spanish.
I was like, who the F put this here?
Yeah, it's me.
But
So if you ever really want to make him mad, just get a whole bunch of rubble and just throw it on the bottom of his sump. You just can't handle it.
Well, it's because it's true. It's so hard to clean up later, and and it probably doesn't have the same space or area or surface area as a brick.
oh no,
So it's just
nowhere near
kind
comparison.
of a waste to me. But
But also, if you're balling on a budget, you already have extra poundage of rock.
True.
You don't want to.
I mean, we found this out kind of with the refugium that we did. It's like when you're taking a bunch of like sharp or different angles and you're kind of putting them all into one area, you create pockets, bigger pockets for things to collect. And then it does exactly opposite what it's not supposed to. So we found out that the hard way. And then that's when when you do go to clean it and you get those beautiful, delightful, delicious smelling sulfur pockets.
so it's actually a good idea now that you brought it up. If you have a fuge where you can put, let's say, egg crate on the bottom off of and then put a pump that can keep that stuff flowing, that's the best.
Oh yeah,
So yeah, if you're going to put rock even in your sump, if we're going to stick with that,
elevate it.
elevate it is a good idea. And then make sure you have some water flow too.
Yeah, because that when you put that pump in that fuge, it just changed everything.
Oh, it absolutely did.
And she elevated it from the
Oh,
bottom of
you
it.
should see. I'm like, I'm not coining this. I'm not whatever, but the queen of DIY, because it was pretty DIY, but it works. So
Yes.
it's pretty.
It's still standing.
Yeah, for now.
For now.
It's held together with random magnets and things and all of this stuff, but it worked.
We'll work on that.
Yeah, well, I'll have to show you sometimes in a pinch. Like even yesterday, in a pinch, I was putting all this rock in and I didn't turn the system off. So then I have the ATO screaming at me. My hands in water. I don't have enough towels. I'm wearing white pants. It was a terrible, like just not conducive to what I was supposed to be doing. Then I'm like, oh crap! Now I have all this extra water. What am I going to do? I don't have a siphon, of course. So what do? I get creative and I take the skimmer and I crank it all the way to the top, and then I use the drain of the skimmer to do like a little mini water change. And in our studio we have people that are not like that, aren't into aquariums at all, and they're like, what the hell is she? Just close the door and walk away. Step away from the crazy lady dressed up like she's gonna go somewhere and it smells absolutely terrible. And I'm throwing things. I don't have a step stool, so I have to use the same bucket that I'm rinsing. I have to go dump it out, tap all the sand out, flip it upside down, stand on it. Ugh.
Here's the kicker. We're right over there.
I was gonna say, what?
I
We're
know.
maybe 5 minutes away.
I know, not even. I mean, and I have my car here. I could have just drove. You know what? And the problem is, it probably could have just opened my car and it was already in there. But it seemed like so far away. And again, I shoot my socks. It was a mess. But
Well, you could have called us and be like, "Hey, can you bring me?"
I know. But I kind of did it in the Minnesota nice passive aggressive. Like, hey, if you guys are not busy at all and you could bring some carbon if you want to see the aquascape, that'd be great. And instead I got crickets and I'm busy doing an RO unit.
I was.
No, I know. So, I mean, there's a little prep work too when you're planning out rock, and we'll go more into that when we do the video. But I do explain how I took all the rock out of the boxes and I set it all out so that I can see what I'm working with. So obviously I'm gonna pick the pieces that have less character or the pieces that are heavier to keep towards the bottom. And then those certain pieces, especially in these boxes that had a ton of character that I really, really wanted to showcase, I separate those all. And then the ones that needed a little extra cleaning, I had to separate those as well. But I mean, the tank's been up for 12 to 16 hours, and it's really clear. So
Well, it does help that we have that roller mat in there.
yeah,
Yeah.
Which, by the way, out of all the roller mats so far that have come out, I think the Red Seas are by far, in my opinion, the easiest to set up.
Not a sponsor, but they are great.
I think that's
But
a
they will
universal.
be, I hope.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a universal. We all like the Red Sea.
Yeah,
roller
and
mat.
change. I mean, coming from a maintenance background, it's
easy
easy
to
to change. I mean, I know that this week we have a couple other. I'm not going to name them brands of roller or of rolls that we need to change. So I'm bringing another service tech with me just to do that because I don't want to. It's like,
Sorry,
Josh. Yeah, sorry. He already knows. He's like, why am I going here? I'm like, don't worry about it. He's like, did the roll run out already? I'm like, don't worry about it. We got this.
Yeah, these are none of that
Sucks to
stapling
sucks.
crap.
Oh yeah, so I mean that's one thing that really, really, really does help on these tanks. Plus, I mean, we have this whole system is Red Sea based, so we have the Red Sea skimmer, the Red Sea roller mat, all the things, and we'll be putting in the reef waves as soon as we get them.
Dosers.
If I can
waves,
stop
160s.
selling them too fast before we can get
Yeah.
them in.
Yeah.
Well, we just have
Well,
to
they
hide 'em.
Hopefully that comes this week so we can get everything all.
Yeah, we'll
set
get
up.
everything going so you can see. Because then we'll go back into flow. We'll go back into lighting spectrums. I know we've had a lot of questions.
Tons of
and-
questions
yeah.
about those. I was just going to ask a brief question. Does your Rockscape matter with what type of pumps you're going to put in there? Like, let's say if we chose to put MP40s in there in comparison to reef waves, or if we went with Nero 5s, what would you say that has a big impact as your overall design?
I guess I would say for the home tank, it will definitely, because that one is viewable. It's a complete walk around. So we're going to be doing a closed loop. So, I mean, we don't have the options of having, I don't have the option of putting an MP. I don't want it hanging off the back of my tank. And then on the end that I do have it, I don't have a dry side. So I wouldn't be able to use that anyway. I think starting off with a plan, knowing that we're going to be doing LPS, we're going to be doing some SPS, I can kind of build around that of where I want to. But definitely when I'm aquascaping, deciding where to put rocks and keeping areas open for flow is like how I go about designing it. Because that's how your corals are gonna. And flow is such a pain in the butt anyway. Because as your tank grows, this coral is super happy now with the flow. This one's pissed off, and now you have to move things around. So I think, I don't know. Do I like the look of certain pumps? Yes. Do I like the functions of certain pumps? Yes. Do you have to kind of use a whole bunch of different things? Absolutely. I think Caesar said it best the last podcast, I think, saying that, gone are the days where your return pump is also all of your flow as well. So, I guess I learned that from when Caesar first started, when I helped him, when he bought his tank from us before he worked for us, he's like, I need all these power heads. I'm like, what the hell are you doing with all this flow? It's like, I need 6 of these and 4 of these. And, and to be honest with you, at the end of the day, when people are like, well, I'll start with 1, it's like, I'll see you in 3 weeks. You know what I mean?
Sometimes sooner than that.
Yeah.
But it is that way though. Like sometimes it's better to run several than run 2
absolutely.
big ones, because then your flow, it's only hitting certain spots.
And I feel with like smaller ones, you can truly get that random flow that you would find in the ocean. It's not a polite little bloop, bloop,
Yeah.
bloop in the ocean. She's ripping.
Yeah, and the other thing is, if you don't have, if you have, let's say, a peninsula tank, and you need the flow on the end that it's viewable, which it sucks to put something on there, but one pump that can be put on there, it's a gyre.
Yep.
It's taking only the top part of it.
You can even do 2 gyres running parallel with the tank running down the glass pane
Yep.
to minimize that viewing
I mean, gone are the days when you have these huge footballs, that you're like, oh gosh, I have to save 1/3 of my tank. The rule of thirds, 1/3 of my tank has to be big footballs filled with. Do you remember those? They were great though. Those wave boxes, those were really cool, but I mean, they took up half the tank.
They're starting to make a comeback a little bit on the wave boxes. They're making smaller designed versions of it. I've seen a few of them. I've heard a lot of people starting to re-put them back into their tank.
Well,
I think Toonsy has one.
yeah, they do.
Yeah.
They do. And it's pretty. I mean, the premise behind it's pretty awesome. I mean, if you go to like even like the zoos where you have those high tides where it just flushes the system and then comes back. I mean, that's just one big box of that. This is awesome. But again, it's you end up with water a lot with the rimless tanks and stuff. You come with a whole bunch of different problems too with water coming up and over.
There's the other option. I don't know if they still make them, the sea swirls or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
On top.
Yep.
And I mean, doesn't take a whole lot of viewing area.
No, that's true. And I mean, I mean, flow is so important, and you can hide it in your aquascape. I think back in the day when we had the Berlin system, I don't know if you guys were familiar with that, where it's like 1 pound of rock, no matter what kind of rock it is, per gallon. So basically, you could have like 3 fish because your whole tank was a rock. And people would bury. I would bury maxi jets because that's all we really had at that time. Bury them in the rock. Okay, well that worked for like the first 6 months, and then how the hell do you get them out? So you couldn't. You just literally, I would snip the cord, and you know what I mean, and have to try to just destroy it that way and get it out that way. So I mean, what goes in has to come out. So I mean, you can hide as much as you want. But again, they will have to be clean. That's a whole nother podcast in itself, like how to make sure that your equipment's maintained and easily accessible.
The who, what, where, when, hows.
Right.
So what we are doing for this one with the aquascape that we have, what are we doing for flow?
I thought we were doing 4 total reef waves, the 2 45s for the long way and then 2 25s for the short way.
Okay.
Just to really give that a random flow, and then also utilizing, because it's a larger tank, we don't want to have literally like Caesars where you have 20 different pumps running in there. We chose the bigger one so that they can just kind of shoot a sheet over it and more or less be done with it.
To shoot the sheet,
Yep.
yeah.
Shoot the sheet.
Shoot the sheet. Okay.
I think too we may end up with some things in the back.
Now looking at the scape, I'm seeing some Neros probably in the back.
Neros or MPs.
Well, I mean, we can do like a vertical on back for the 25.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah,
and then the other 2 on top.
Yep.
Yeah. So I guess another thing when you are aquascaping, when you are thinking about putting in all your power heads and stuff, making sure that if you do not want to see any cords in your tank, that you leave ample space behind and on the sides if you do want those dry sides for any Ecotech products. Because I mean, I don't even know how far away from the wall we put this, but I don't even know if that's an option.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
We left like 4 inches.
Yeah, we left it. So, but again, the last thing you ever want to do is aquascape your tank and then realize you have to move the tank out a little bit more in order for it to fit the canopy or to get your skimmer in or whatever. Because the one frustrating thing about aquascaping, or all the frustrating things about aquascaping, is you get it done right, and then you have to move it, and it never, ever, ever goes back into place the way you had it before.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when you dig a hole and then you try to put the same amount of dirt back. It doesn't fit. What the hell?
Well, that's because you have to.
We won't ask why you're digging holes.
Yeah, I know.
Oh,
Again,
shoot.
I hate people and I dig holes. I'm very concerned.
Just wait until my daughter start dating.
Oh,
There'll
dear.
be a lot more holes in that backyard.
Oh, ay caramba. Oh, man. I just don't even have a comment for that anymore, Caesar.
But isn't it true though?
Oh, absolutely.
I don't know. Probably it's because it's compact, but whatever.
Yeah, so I don't know where we were going with that one, but we digging holes and people and stuff.
Leave room for your wave makers.
There you go. Thank you,
In a
Brendan.
nutshell.
Oops.
be prepared for cord
So you
management.
don't have to dig holes.
Yeah. And when you say nutshell, I think of Austin Powers when he's like, here, this is me in a nutshell.
That is what I hope everybody envisions when you think of a nutshell, because that is what I envision most
Ted
of the time.
in a
Just,
nutshell.
"Oh, I'm in a nutshell.
With
Please
a
help
burning
me."
beard.
Oh, good times. Good times.
All right. Back to aquascaping. I think we're kind of ready to wrap it up.
I think so too.
At least the beginning of it. I mean, I know we didn't touch on different types of rocks. We can always circle back to that. Also, cycling would probably be the next logical thing of what we're going to do for cycling. Skimmer in the beginning, skimmer not, when to turn your lights on, when not to turn your lights on, all of the fun stuff. So I think any other words?
Anything else on rocks,
Nope.
Brendan?
Be awesome.
We'll have lots to different topics to talk about as we progress with this tank and we start, doing the different add-ons and livestock additions to it down the road. So, it's going to be fun seeing it and seeing the journey it makes. So it's a good start so far.
And we have rocks for sale too.
Yep.
We do.
Lots of rocks.
Do we have these rocks for sale?
No,
No.
we do not have
Unfortunately
any
not.
of these rocks for sale.
Because I can already foresee that question popping up big
Nope.
time.
No, we don't. So if you find them anywhere, grab them up. Yep. If you find a old tank, people getting out of the hobby from 25 years ago, that's where you're going to find it.
Make sure you test for copper.
Oh, yep. That's true.
Because we don't know what medication or whatever people have been.
Yeah, we're
putting
not going to
in.
go there. Still angry.
Yep, that's why I made that.
Well, no.
weird,
I mean,
"Oh."
yeah, I know, but it's true. If you get rock from someone else, make
Yep.
sure you
Too
know.
soon. Too soon.
Was it?
Yeah.
Oh shit.
Yep.
Chief got found.
All right. Before I start to cry, I think we're going to sign out. I'm going to let Brendan sign out on this one
Since we didn't.
Well, thank you guys for tuning into the podcast today, New Wave After Dark. It's been a pleasure. This was Aquascaping, the first part. We might revisit this topic a little bit later, but it's been a pleasure. As always, you can check us out at newwaveaquaria.com/podcast and submit any questions you might have there. So,
I think that was awkward scaping. Sign off.
and we'll see you later.
Bye.
Bye.
And it's a wrap.